Azazelo's eyes were both the same, empty and black, and his face was white and cold. Now Azazelo flew in his true form, as the demon of the waterless desert, the killer demon. Margarita could not see herself, but she saw very well how the master had changed. His hair was now white in the moonlight and gathered behind in a braid, and it flew on the wind. When the wind blew the cloak away from the master's legs, Margarita saw the stars of spurs on his jackboots, now going out, now lighting up. Like the demon youth, the master flew with his eyes fixed on the moon, yet smiling to it, as to a close and beloved friend, and, from a habit acquired in room number 118, murmuring something to himself. And, finally, Woland also flew in his true image. Margarita could not have said what his horse's bridle was made of, but thought it might be chains of moonlight, and the horse itself was a mass of darkness, and the horse's mane a storm cloud, and the rider's spurs the white flecks of stars. Thus they flew in silence for a long time, until the place itself began to change below them. The melancholy forests drowned in earthly darkness and drew with them the dim blades of the rivers. Boulders appeared and began to gleam below, with black gaps between them where the moonlight did not penetrate. Woland reined in his horse on a stony, joyless, flat summit, and the riders then proceeded at a walk, listening to the crunch of flint and stone under the horses' shoes. Moonlight flooded the platform greenly and brightly, and soon Margarita made out an armchair in this deserted place and in it the white figure of a seated man. Possibly the seated man was deaf, or else too sunk in his own thoughts. He did not hear the stony earth shudder under the horse's weight, and the riders approached him without disturbing him. The moon helped Margarita well, it shone better than the best electric lantern, and Margarita saw that the seated man, whose eyes seemed blind, rubbed his hands fitfully, and peered with those same unseeing eyes at the disk of the moon. Now Margarita saw that beside the heavy stone chair, on which sparks glittered in the moonlight, lay a dark, huge, sharp-eared dog, and, like its master, it gazed anxiously at the moon. Pieces of a broken jug were scattered by the seated man's feet and an undrying black-red puddle spread there. The riders stopped their horses. Your novel has been read, Wolin began, turning to the master, and the only thing said about it was that, unfortunately, it is not finished. So, then, I wanted to show you your hero. For about 2,000 years he has been sitting on this platform and sleeping, but when the full moon comes, as you see, he is tormented by insomnia. It torments not only him, but also his faithful guardian, the dog. If it is true that cowardice is the most grievous vice, then the dog at least is not guilty of it. Storms were the only thing the brave dog feared. Well, he who loves must share the lot of the one he loves. What is he saying? Asked Margarita, and her perfectly calm face clouded over with compassion. He says one and the same thing, Woland replied. He says that even the moon gives him no peace, and that his is a bad job. That is what he always says when he is not asleep, and when he sleeps, he dreams one and the same thing. There is a path of moonlight, and he wants to walk down it and talk with the prisoner Ha-Nosri, because, as he insists, he never finished what he was saying that time, long ago, on the 14th day of the spring month of Nisan. But, alas, for some reason he never manages to get onto this path, and no one comes to him. Then there's no help for it, he must talk to himself. However, one does need some diversity, and to his talk about the moon he often adds that of all things in the world, he most hates his immortality and his unheard of fame. He maintains that he would willingly exchange his lot for that of the ragged tramp Matthew Levi. "12,000 moons for one moon long ago, isn't that too much?" asked Margarita. "Repeating the story with Frida?" said Woland. "But don't trouble yourself here, Margarita. Everything will turn out right, the world is built on that. Let him go." Margarita suddenly cried piercingly, as she had cried once as a witch, and at this cry a stone fell somewhere in the mountains and tumbled down the ledges into the abyss, filling the mountains with rumbling. But Margarita could not have said whether it was the rumbling of its fall or the rumbling of satanic laughter. In any case, Woland was laughing as he glanced at Margarita and said, "Don't shout in the mountains, he's accustomed to avalanches anyway, and it won't rouse him." "You don't need to ask for him, Margarita, because the one he so yearns to talk with has already asked for him. Here Woland turned to the master and said, "Well, now you can finish your novel with one phrase." The master seemed to have been expecting this, as he stood motionless and looked at the seated procurator. He cupped his hands to his mouth and cried out so that the echo leapt over the unpeopled and unforested mountains. "You're free. You're free. He's waiting for you." The mountains turned the master's voice to thunder, and by this same thunder they were destroyed. The accursed rocky walls collapsed. Only the platform with the stone armchair remained. Over the black abyss into which the walls had gone, a boundless city lit up, dominated by gleaming idols above a garden grown luxuriously over many thousands of moons. The path of moonlight so long awaited by the procurator stretched right to this garden, and the first to rush down it was the sharp-eared dog. The man in the white cloak with blood-red lining rose from the armchair and shouted something in a hoarse, cracked voice. It was impossible to tell whether he was weeping or laughing, or what he shouted. It could only be seen that, following his faithful guardian, he, too, rushed headlong down the path of moonlight. "I'm to follow him there?" the master asked anxiously, holding the bridle. "No," replied Woland, "why run after what is already finished?" "There, then?" the master asked, turning and pointing back, where the recently abandoned city with the gingerbread towers of its convent, with the sun broken to smithereens in its windows, now wove itself behind them. "Not there, either," replied Woland, and his voice thickened and flowed over the rocks. "Romantic master." He, whom the hero you invented and have just set free so yearns to see, has read your novel. Here Woland turned to Margarita, Margarita Nikolaevna. It is impossible not to believe that you have tried to think up the best future for the master, but, really, what I am offering you, and what Yeshua has asked for you, is better still.